Hello, my name is Sammy Turbrack, and I am a functional nutrition therapy practitioner. It's a mouthful, as well as a prenatal and postpartum specialist in the areas of exercise and nutrition. I am also a birth doula. So essentially, all things wanting to and having babies. That's what I do. I support moms from when their journey starts, and I believe that that starts with you with the desire to become a mom and all the way to after we have babies, and then we're helping our babies grow into children and to adults. So I originally got into this because as a nutrition and exercise specialist, I got pregnant and I felt super overwhelmed and unknowledgeable in how to care for myself during pregnancy. And that's what really kind of started my mission into figuring out how can I support myself better during this time, as well as any other women that I knew that were pregnant and wanted to continue to have a healthy pregnancy and stay optimal throughout that process. And then what I realized when I became a mother was that all of the ways that I was doing things, all of the habits that I had built and the systems that I had put in place and the consistency needed to change because I didn't have the same time. I did not have the same capacity, and my body was different and it adapted differently and responded differently. And so I needed to adjust everything. And that was very overwhelming. And I felt very alone because I did not have anybody to speak to that, anybody to help guide me in that area. So that is my mission for women, is to help them optimize their hormones to get pregnant, to help them have safe, healthy, thriving pregnancies and a wonderful aligned birth experience, as well as prove to them that it is possible to be a healthy mom. It is possible to focus on yourself and take time for yourself and prioritize your needs while also being a mother. And in fact, it's what's going to allow you to be a better mother, because one of the best things that we can do as moms is set an example for our children. And so that is my goal for this training. I'm going to split it up into two videos. But the goal is that I help educate a little bit that you might not know of everything that your body goes through when it's pregnant, everything that it goes through during delivery, and then during the postpartum period, to give you a better understanding of just how amazing and powerful the female body is, and to hopefully appreciate and honor it more. So then that way, when it comes to doing the daily things, you're doing it from a place of love and appreciation and honor versus frustration and versus shame and versus self-consciousness. Okay. So that's my number one goal. And my number two goal is that I give you some small daily action steps that you can do on a busy mom schedule, whether you're working inside or outside of the home, and that these are applicable across the board, regardless of what's going on. Now, I do believe that an individual approach is the best approach. So if at any point in time you feel as though something isn't aligning, that exercise isn't possible for you in the suggestions that I give, or whatever the case is, or you eat a certain way, again, whatever it is, please, please, please connect with me. Please reach out. There's going to be opportunity at the end for you to book a free clarity call. And again, my goal there is just to serve you. My goal there is just to give you these tools, because most of us just need the tools. We just need to be able to know that there is a way and figure out how and when we can apply these things. And then if by chance you need additional help, you need additional support, then we can talk about that. But like I said, most of the time when it comes to women that I work with, the knowledge and then the application is what we need. And it's a lot easier if we simplify it versus giving you all of the things. Let's figure out what works for you. Okay. So we're going to go over, first I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go over essentially the timeline of postpartum, because it's not 6 weeks. It's actually 2 years and could potentially be longer depending on the person and the circumstance. But we're going to go through the timeline just to help you kind of move through where you might be in that timeline, because it's not always chronological. You might be 8 months postpartum, but you still might be dealing with week one issues. then that means that you're week 1. And that means that we have to solve those problems. So let's dive into that a little bit. And then we're going to go through essentially ways that you can help to move yourself forward, or like I say, move the needle forward. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And this is the timeline that I have. So the timeline is essentially the 2 years that we've got going on here. And like I said, this is different for everybody, but on average, the postpartum period is around 2 years long. Okay. And so I've kind of broken it up into 4 subcategories. The immediate postpartum, which is that first week, we're focusing on responding and recovering from the act of labor and birth, because that is a very, it's a wonderful, beautiful thing, but it is a life and death situation. And so there is a response there. If you've ever been in a life and death situation, you know that you have to recover from that. You have to de-stress. You have to like stimulate the nervous system and relax the nervous system in a certain way so it can come down from that life and death situation. And so that's the focus in week 1. Then weeks 2 through month 2, we're really focusing on wound healing. So think of like the physical healing. So not only were you pregnant for 40 plus weeks, but you also went through hours and hours of labor, and then the challenging delivery process, whether that was vaginal or C-section, and you have wounds. You have very large wounds that we have to heal. And that takes a combination of nutrients and a combination of rest. And your rest is compromised when you are in that postpartum period, as you all know. And so how do we go about healing and supporting that? Phase 3 is the hormone and energy balance. So we're going to dive into a little bit about like how those are impacted, and really the time frame in which those can be balanced and improved upon, because many of us think that it's like a light switch, or it's like a day, tomorrow they should be better. And it actually takes a while for those to respond. And then last but not least, we have optimizing and strengthening. So this is where the body has healed, and now we have to strengthen. And now we have to figure out how to create consistency and optimize our routine, because that's what's going to allow us to keep growing stronger and keep getting better and keep improving our health. That can only happen if we create that consistency. And that consistency is really hard to do in the first year, because as you all know, that first year, there's a lot of change going on. Okay. So how do we navigate that and figure out how to build that consistency? Okay. So like I said, this is just another page to kind of help break down. So that phase 1, we're focused on stress response. We're focused on connection with the baby, and we're focused on rest. And like I said, rest is compromised. So we have to pull it in where we can, how we can. I also want to caveat that by saying that I'm going to talk about these things in like optimally. This is what days 1 through 7 should look like. Now, that might not have been, you might already be past days 1 through 7, and that might not have been the reality for you. 1, that's okay. 2, I want you to appreciate and understand that if we were compromised in that in that time period, that might be why we're still having some issues. And that's also okay. So a lot of times we put that pressure on ourselves to like have this timeline and feel better by this time, without really truly understanding that some of us don't have wonderful support systems. Some of us don't have the ability to take off 4 months from work. Some of us don't have, we might have several other kids that we also have to take care of during this time. So laying in our bed for a week isn't a possibility. So it's not to shame anyone for their specific circumstance. It's actually more so to allow you to appreciate your circumstance and be able to say, hey, because I didn't have this, I'm going to give myself a little bit more grace. This might take a little bit more time. And since I didn't have support here, or didn't have this going on here, maybe I can shift it and focus on things here. Okay. So this is not me telling you how it should go. And if it doesn't go that way, then you're SOL, for lack of a better term. This is to allow you that life isn't perfect, and we're going to have to do some adjustments. And I think our biggest, harshest critics are ourselves. And I think it's just because we don't truly understand everything that the body goes through. Okay. So back to it. Phase 2, that wound healing, really focusing on nutrients needed to help heal the body. What are those nutrients? Rest and recovery as needed, movement, what movement is appropriate versus not appropriate, and then support from others. So how to bring in that support if you have it. With 3, the hormones and energy balance, we're establishing these new norms. We are creating consistency. This is where the consistency starts. And then we're adjusting to the ebbs and the flows. And then when it comes to optimizing and strengthening, we're sharing the load, we're paying attention to biofeedback, and we're stepping back into what's uncomfortable. So, and I use that term comfortable and uncomfortable because similar to like stress, that whenever your body's in a state of survival, we need to focus on what's going to allow us to recover, what's going to allow us to rest, what's going to allow us, like what's going to bring comfort and safety back into the body. And then once we've reached that spot of safety, in order to keep growing and stop stalling, we need to then push ourselves into a little bit of uncomfortableness and challenge the body a little bit more. And so it's understanding when is that appropriate and when is it harmful? When is it okay to push through and do the hard thing? And when should we be pulling back and doing the restorative thing? And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to learn. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. Okay, so the immediate postpartum period. So this is that day 1 through 7, where you just had baby, you just went through an actual life or death situation. That is how serious this is. You went to war. You were in a battle for your life and for their life. And that's how your body responds. So when it comes to the hormones that are released, that's what's happening to the body. And I think that that's really important for us to understand that it takes a lot. I mean, think about, even odds are most of us haven't been in a life and death situation. So if you have, then you understand what this feels like. You understand what you feel like after that situation has happened and how exhausted your body is and how much that nervous system is fried and needs to recover. The challenging part is that in this situation, you don't have the ability to go sleep for 8-10 hours for multiple days in a row. You have to get up every couple hours and you have to take care of a human. So, and then a lot of your nutrients, especially for breastfeeding, are going to be going to that human. So it's understanding and appreciated. My body just went through this amazing, miraculous, hard thing. And I need rest, and bonding with my baby needs to be the number one most important thing. So I just put down, the body releases a rush of hormones that help you go through this labor and birth process. It's what helps give us the energy. It's what helps us push through and not give up, because this is so hard. And it's what helps keep us going, even though we're sleep deprived, because we've been in labor for the last 36 hours. So these are just a couple of the hormones that you've probably heard of. There's adrenaline, which that is a stress response hormone. There's oxytocin, that's a labor hormone, as well as the love hormone. There's dopamine, this is a pleasure hormone. And there's epinephrine, that's another one of those stress hormones. So these are things that again, there's more, but these are some of the big ones that are released during this time. And that when it comes to hormones, our body craves balance with our hormones. So when we have a big influx, we then have to respond accordingly. So our goal would be, after we have this big event and we have this rush of this hormones, is we need to come back to what we call homeostasis. And so that's where that rest and that nourishment and that recovery is super, super important. So some of the things that help the nervous system do that are, like I said, sleep, which is going to be compromised, hydration, nutrient-rich foods, bonding with baby. And those are and again, that's it. That's what I want you to focus on. If that's a possibility, if we can have somebody else do all of the other things and that allows you to be there with baby, that's really, really helpful. I like to give the suggestion of stay in bed days 1 through 3. Again, aside from you going to the bathroom and things like that, and then stay close to bed days 4 through 7. So that means we're going maybe to the kitchen to make some food, or we're going, out to the mailbox, or we're going, we're taking these small little trips, but you're staying relatively close to the bed because you need to be in bed recovering. Okay. Wound healing. So this is moving forward up until 2 months. Again, this could take longer depending on the person and what they've been through. But regardless of whether you had a vaginal or a C-section, you have a wound the size of a dinner plate inside your abdomen after you give birth, because that wound is where the placenta was. And that's relatively, I showed a picture of a placenta so you could see that's relatively how big that placenta is about the size of a dinner plate. Okay. And so that was attached to the lining inside your uterus. And so now we have a wound here. Think of a big scab. And I like to picture this because if this wound, if you had a wound this big on the outside of your body, like if it was on the outside of your abdomen and people saw that and you saw that, how careful would you be with your body while it healed? You'd be very, very careful with it. You would take wonderful care of it so that this huge wound could close. But because we don't see it and because others don't see it, we try to ignore that it's there. And so understanding that's why it takes 2 months. It's why it takes 2 months just to heal this one wound. It's because it's very large. And again, there are three main areas for that really, really help when it comes to healing. Okay. And it's hydration, proper hydration. It's proper nourishment. That's the quality and quantity. So enough good foods that we're eating. And then it's sleep. And you are not getting sleep. You're not getting adequate sleep during this time. So that means it's going to take longer to heal this wound than it would if you were able to get a full night's rest every single night. Because you're not able to do that, the only time the body heals is while we're sleeping. So if you're getting 2-hour chunks of sleep, that's minimizing how much our body can heal. So again, I say that not as a doom and gloom. I say that so you can appreciate everything your body's going through and you can give yourself grace that this takes time and stop rushing the process. Stop rushing the process because you can't. And if you try to, we could cause more harm than good. Okay. So I also put down the things that interfere with healing, and that is high stress, that is broken sleep, that's inflammatory foods, and gut issues, as well as a plethora of other things. So it's not just about what are we doing to pull things in, but also what are we doing to avoid things that could further compromise our healing process. You're getting broken sleep. That's a fact. That's okay. Okay. That's the reality that we have to live in. Now, but what can I do in the other areas? What can I do when it comes to high stress? How can I help support my nervous system so that way I don't feel like I'm constantly stressed out all the time? What does that mean when it comes to pulling in extra help and things like that? Okay. And we'll talk in some more detail about that. Inflammatory foods. A lot of times we're going to want to eat whatever we want to eat, and we're going to be ravenous when we are postpartum. But nourishing foods going to help you heal faster. Inflammatory foods, junk food, things like that. Not only is it void of nutrients, but it's also potentially going to cause some further damage, which means that your immune system can't go heal that dinner plate wound in your abdomen. Instead, it has to focus on fighting off whatever junk you just put into your body. And again, there's a time for pleasure foods, but this is just, again, understanding that the better you take care of yourself, the better you're going to feel faster, right? Gut issues. If you're not somebody who is digesting your food well, you're not somebody who is having regular healthy bowel movements, you're somebody who deals with a lot of gas, a lot of bloating, things like that. Those are all things that could impact and inhibit the body from healing optimally, because that means that your immune system is focusing there. So these are the areas that we would want to look at to help improve. Hormone and energy balance. So I say 2 months to a year because that's how long it's going to take to get you to sleep through the night, to get you to create some consistency in how you're eating and how you're moving, and hopefully also to get you out of that survival state and into a safe space, because that's what's really going to influence your hormones. So did you know that your hormones are a signal, which means they are never the root cause? So when your stress hormones are out of whack, like your cortisol, or when your sex hormones are out of whack, like your estrogen, your progesterone, things like that, it's all a response to something happening in the body, and the hormones respond to that because they're a signal. Okay. So this is the big, going back to fertility is a big area that we work on, because if your sex hormones are off, there's another reason. So just pumping you full of synthetic hormones is not going to solve the problem. What we need to do is figure out why were your hormones off. And that could be gut issues. That could be nervous system issues and dysregulation. That could be nutrient deficiencies, liver and kidney issues, sleep deprivation, stress overload. All of these things are likely the root cause So like you're going to have probably multiple of these going on. And then so if we improve these areas, if we fix these problems, then your hormones and your energy will respond accordingly. And normally what we see is that your energy will respond first. So you'll start to see improved energy throughout the day. You'll start to sleep better. You'll start to function better throughout the day without caffeine, things like that. And then we'll see the hormones respond after. So this is something that, again, during that first year of being a mom, your norm or your schedule that you will start to set up and baby will start to have of like, oh, they're taking 4 naps throughout the day and they're sleeping for about an hour and then they're up for 2 hours. And then all of a sudden, when you feel like you got a rhythm down, then they change it. They go through a leap and then all of a sudden they're doing something else. And now they're sleeping for 3 naps a day and it's for an hour and a half. And now, so again, this first year, there's a lot of change that happens. And that's okay, but we need to be in a little bit more of like an ebb and flow during this time. And that can be challenging to create some consistency. And so again, it's just giving you a little bit more grace to take your time here. And I would say for most parents, and this is different for everybody, but most kids aren't sleeping through the night until they're several months old, 6 to 8, some people even longer than that. So if baby's not sleeping through the night, then you're not sleeping through the night. If you're not sleeping through the night, then we're compromised when it comes to how much our body can heal and function really well. So these are the things that we look for to start to improve the process. And then optimizing and strengthening. Again, we can't optimize and strengthen until we've done the healing. And so until all of those previous things are happening, we're going to kind of your body will always prioritize, I need to heal first. And this is what we see a lot when it comes to like body composition and stuff like that. Women who are like, well, I'm a year postpartum and I'm still 20 pounds overweight. It's because your body hasn't healed. And if your body hasn't healed, then your body's going to try to hold on to body fat as long as possible because it hasn't healed yet. It doesn't feel safe to do that yet. Same thing when it comes to energy. My energy is still really, really low, but I am sleeping through the night. I might be even sleeping like 10 hours and I'm exhausted because we haven't healed yet. So something else might be happening that's interrupting that, right? So understanding as well as how long it takes to actually correct and rehab your abdomen and your pelvic floor. It took me 14 months. I'm an exercise specialist. It's what I do for a living. It took me 14 months to heal my core and my pelvic floor. Everyone is different, but I remember going to my physical therapist at 14 months postpartum and asking him why I couldn't back squat because I was a heavy weightlifter. I was like, I cannot back squat more than 80 pounds. And 80 pounds was super light for my legs. But I was like, I get back pain immediately if I go any higher than that. He's like, it's because your abdomen and your pelvic floor aren't fully healed. We've got to take longer, take the weight off the bar. And that was really hard for me to hear because I was putting pressure on myself that I needed to heal by a certain time. But I was also somebody who my baby was sick for the first 9 months of his life, which means he wasn't sleeping through the night, which means I wasn't sleeping through the night, which means that all the work that I was doing to help heal my core, my pelvic floor, it was taking longer. I was progressing, but I was progressing a little bit slower than what I would have liked to have progressed at. What I was used to doing, how quickly I would progress in the first 30 years of my life, I was a lot slower because I was compromised. My schedule was compromised. My sleep was compromised. And so even though I was eating well, and even though I was exercising, and even though I was drinking my water and managing my stress and doing these things, it was still going to take a little bit longer because this one area was compromised. And that's okay. I had to stop beating myself up and I had to take as long as it needs to take, listen to my body. And eventually, now that I was sleeping through the night, it only took a couple more months for me to be in a really, really good spot. But had I rushed that process, I probably could have caused a lot of damage to my back because I was trying to rush the process. So hopefully that all resonates with the timeline there. Now, next, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into how you can start to really create some change. And so today we're going to go over a couple aspects, and I call this acknowledge and anticipate. All right. And then day 2, we're going to go over act and ask. Okay. So so as we kind of chat through this, when it comes to acknowledging, that's primarily the goal of what I just showed you, is I want you to acknowledge what your body's been through. I want you to acknowledge that for 40 plus weeks, your abdomen was stretched and your pelvic floor was compromised and your hormones were being suppressed and you were growing body parts. So a lot of your nutrients was going towards baby and your posture was changing and adapting to make room for baby, and digestion could have been compromised, and all of these things that our body was designed to do. But we have to understand that it went through all of that. And that was really, really hard. And then you went through labor and delivery, which was a life and death situation, even though, and that's also why it's really important as a birth doula that I try to make that situation as peaceful as possible. I'm trying to make, our goal as doulas is to make a life and death situation as peaceful and wonderful and beautiful and aligned as possible. That is a possibility. We can do that, and it's wonderful, but it's not taking away from the fact that your body's going through a lot. So appreciating that, appreciating also what happens postpartum, in that the biggest area when it comes to healing, the biggest significant area when it comes to healing is sleep. And that is the biggest area that you're compromised in when you're postpartum. So we have to understand that it's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to take a little bit longer, and that's okay. Your focus is, what can I do versus what can't I do? Okay. It's taking pressure off of yourself. It's taking the timeline off of yourself, and it's saying, okay, if today is a day that baby isn't doing well and chaos is ensuing everywhere, what are the one or two things I can do in these one or two areas? And maybe it's just drinking water, and maybe it's just eating a healthy breakfast. What are the things that I can do to help support my body today? And focus on that. Okay. So that acknowledging my body's been through a lot. My body, this is the only body that I have. I've been doing this for 15 years, working with women on health. Most of them come to me working against their body, beating their body up to try to get it to behave and perform and look a certain way. And our body is too intelligent for that. And she won't take that disrespect. So respect your body, work with her, listen to her, acknowledge what she's been through, and then get the support that you need to be able to help her heal. And that should be the first goal, is to heal. Okay. So, and that kind of moves into anticipating. So when it comes to anticipating, we want to figure out the what can I do versus what can I do, focusing on what can I do, what's going to help my body feel better today, what's going to help my body feel better tomorrow. And so when we are looking at our areas, we're anticipating our needs. Okay. And that can start with just, what's my need this afternoon? If it's the morning, well, you can actually start with, what's my need right now? What does my body need right now to feel better? Does it need a little bit of water? Does it need some food? Does it need to go for a walk? Does it need some rest? What does it need right now? And not talking pleasure, talking about like nourishing your body. What does it need right now? And the next step would be, what does it need the rest of the day? And then maybe the next step is, what does it need tomorrow? And then maybe the next step is, what does it need in the next 48 hours, in the next week? In your earlier postpartum period, you're going to be taking care of your immediate need and maybe looking into the future a little bit, like for the rest of the day. But that's probably where it's going to stop. And that's okay. And then as baby grows and as your schedule gets a little bit more routine, you're going to be able to kind of go through longer spurts. Okay, baby's on a little bit of a regimen. All right, then that means I can maybe say, what can I do this next day? And what can I maybe do tomorrow? Awesome. The next 48 hours, I can kind of plan, right? And of course, could things hit the fan in the next 48 hours? Of course. But your ability to be able to say, okay, let's look ahead a little bit and anticipate my needs. And then eventually you'll be able to go longer and longer and look at things bigger picture. But oftentimes, a lot of where that anxiety comes in is that we think we either need to plan everything or we need to live in constant chaos. And that's not true. We're actually on a spectrum. And if constant chaos is planning nothing, and then this is complete order, odds are you're somewhere in the middle. And when you're newly postpartum, you're going to be a little bit closer to chaos. Like I said, handle your immediate need, handle the next need, handle the next need. And then as we continue to grow, we're going to be able to get a little bit more closer, but we're never going to be all or nothing. We're never going to be totally order all the time. That's not life as a mother. And then, but living in chaos is super exhaustive, and you're not going to be able to create any consistency if you're living in constant chaos all the time. So if you are somebody who's like, I have these intentions, I have these goals, I want to feel and function this way, but I'm somebody who's living in constant chaos because I can't feel like I can create a schedule, that's what we're going to do. That's your homework for this day one. Is I have a daily tracker. And this daily tracker is first just to get you to acknowledge where you are. What are my current actions? How am I sleeping? How am I eating? How am I hydrating? How am I moving? All of these things. How am I feeling? What is my current state? And then from there, it's where can we make little changes? Where can we make these small, and I say bricks. If we're creating a foundation, I want to lay a brick a day. One brick. Where can I make a change today? That's going to move me in the right direction. It's going to lay a brick down. Okay, tomorrow, what's another brick that I can lay down? And start to kind of build from there. So attached to this, you should be getting a 3-day tracker. And the goal for the next 3 days is to track your current behavior and how your body's feeling and functioning. And then from there, on day 2, we're going to kind of go through and work through how to act, which means create some change. That requires action. So how do we create some change in what we currently got going on? And then where do we need to ask for support? Because that's also something that we maybe didn't need to do previous to having children. But now that we have children, there's a reason there's that saying, it takes a village. It's not just to raise the kids. It takes a village because you can't forget about you. And if you want to prioritize yourself, which you absolutely should, then we're probably going to need to ask for some support. And that could be from partners if we have partners, it could be from family if we have family. It also could be from professionals if we need that level of support. That is completely okay. We should all be investing in ourselves. That's the most important thing to invest in. So we'll go through on day 2 how to act and how to ask. Till then.